What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. So in my last video, I replaced the valve body in the Torqueflite 904 in the D100 project. And I did that because, well, when I first got this truck, it had issues shifting ever since I got it. It was upshifting weird, downshifting late. I mean, I'd be sitting at a dead stop for 15, 20 seconds, then it would downshift to first. So it was just all over the place. It just wasn't right. Somebody had been in there previous to me getting the truck and had done some work to the valve body, so I didn't know the full history of it, and it was kind of a mess. So I ended up doing a shift kit on it. I did a B&M Transpac shift kit, and that improved things. You know, it definitely it seemed to get rid of some of the problems, but there was still something not right. Something I didn't like about it. So I replaced the valve body, and as you'd expect, worked fine. You know, nice smooth shifts up and down, performed just as you would expect a stock valve body to work. So with that done, now it's time to modify it. I mean, you can't leave things stock. You can't not modify. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use this Shift Technology Products shift correction package. And what that's going to do is that's going to increase the speed at which the lockup engages. So if I remember right, in these Torqueflite 904s, and this is out of a 78, that's the year of the transmission. That was the first year of the lockup. So when the lockup came out, it engages, I believe, at like 30 something miles an hour. And what that does is that basically creates a mechanical connection between the engine and the transmission. Basically locks it up. And that just helps to increase fuel economy. It helps prevent slippage when at like highway speeds. It keeps the transmission and the engine completely engaged. And it helps to reduce wear and tear by not having that constant slippage in the transmission. But when you're making you're using that transmission in like a hot rod situation where you're going to be kind of having fun with it, you're going to be romping on it, you're going to be on and off the gas and just, you know, hot rod in the way that you hot rod, that can cause the lockup to engage, disengage, engage, disengage. That can cause some lockup shudder and could possibly lead to premature wear by those actions. So what this is going to do is going to increase that speed at which the lockup engages, and thereby preventing it from cycling on and off. But it'll come on when like cruising down the highway. Then it'll come on, and that's when you really want it. So that's going to be the first thing that I'm going to be working on today. What's going on, guys? Future Bill here. I was in the middle of editing this video when I realized it's going to be a bit longer than my typical video lately. But I felt it's important to try and keep as much detail in this video as I could about this project. So hope you guys enjoy it. Hope you learned something. So after letting the transmission drain for what was honestly like 2 days, I went ahead and I dropped the pan and pulled the valve body. Now, once I pulled the valve body, I separated the top half from the bottom, and I went ahead and stripped most of it down. There's still some components in there. I just haven't needed to remove those yet. So what I did have to remove here was the converter valve and the line pressure regulator valve. So these are removed. They're sitting right here because I need to drill a couple of holes in this area. So the kit includes all the springs you need, along with a couple of retaining clips or retaining rings, a gauge, all the drill bits you need. And like I said, and the springs you're going to need. Some of these springs are like an either or spring, so you're not going to use everything in here. But one of the first steps I need to do is drill a couple of holes. So in all honesty, I've already drilled 2 of them because I was starting the video and realized I didn't have my mic on. So yeah. So these two holes are already drilled, and these are actually in step 6, where it says you look at the lockup module, and if there's no vent right here, and I'll kind of show on the diagram, I don't know how well this is going to show up on the diagram here, but there's a vent, no vent. So mine obviously doesn't have the vent. So you drill 2.098 holes right below the converter valve. Now I need to go ahead and drill a 0.73 hole right there. So this is the line pressure regulator valve, and I need to drill a 0.073 hole connecting these two passages. All right, so in order to drill this, the housing is aluminum, so drilling through it is really easy. Just got to take it slow. There's no need for any kind of cutting oil or anything like that. It's just aluminum. It drills right through there. Just take it slow. All right, with that hole drilled, the next step would have been to drill the two holes, the two 098 holes right here through the face into this first passageway here. But like I said, I already did that. So now I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to clean everything off, and then we'll go on to the next step. So once I got the valve body cleaned up, all I did was just spray it down with some brake cleaner and then dry it out with some compressed air to get all those little shavings out of there from drilling those holes. It's time to remove the separator plate from the channel plate. And mine just had 2 screws holding it in. So we removed that. Oh, you can also see that I replaced all the shop towels inside this aluminum cooking pan that I use to work in. I really like this setup. I mean, this helps contain any leaks. It helps contain, small parts, and it just makes for a nice, convenient, clean work area, especially when doing something like this. You really want to be mindful of your work environment. All right, so with the separator plate removed from the channel plate, there are going to be some holes that get drilled in the separator plate, but first I need to remove, there are 2 check balls here in the channel valve. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those. These will end up getting discarded. But what I want to do before I continue with the drilling of the separator plate, in my last video, I noticed when I compared this valve body to the one that came out of the transmission, there's some fluid passages, and it looks like they're just some drains that they don't look like they got machined all the way. I mean, that's like a really rough opening. That one there were like 3 of them that I noticed. I think it was over here somewhere. Looking at it from the inside, you can see just how big that opening is supposed to be. Yeah, one there, one there, one up there. So yeah, there's 3 of them. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can fix that. I'm going to see if I have a carbide bit that I can get down in there a little bit and clean that up. Clean up those openings. All right, I am just going to take this real slow, real easy, and open up some of these fluid passages. All right, that is a lot better. I'm not going to worry about trying to get them opened up all the way to the full size of that opening. But at least most of the restrictions are gone now. I don't have a fine enough tip to get into some of the corners there, and I don't want to risk damaging the parts that obviously I don't want to hit. This one can actually go a little bit more. Yeah, that's a lot better. At least that just opens up. I think they're just drains, because I'm looking at the areas that I just opened up, and there's no other passage into that area. So it's not like it's one of these fluid paths where I think those are just drains. So yeah, I'm really happy with that. I'm going to take this over, clean this out the same way. I'm just going to spray it down with some brake cleaner and then hit it with compressed air to make sure I get all that dust out of there, all those little chips. I'm going to replace the shop rags again. Actually, thinking about it, before I replace the shop towels, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drill the separator plate. So there are 4 holes marked on the instructions here that have to get enlarged, and there's 2 different sizes. There's regular duty and heavy duty. I'm just going to go by the regular duty. I'd rather have a little more restriction than open it up too much. So hole A, which we're diagram, is this one right here. Yep, that is opened up to a 1/8. So when I bit my drill, go ahead and drill that almost right there. That really goes there. So A and C. So open that up. Hole B, this one. All right, with all the 4 holes drilled out, I'm going to clean up this plate. Same thing, I'm just going to wipe it down with some brake cleaner and then spray it off with some compressed air. All right, I'm going to go spray this off, and then I'm going to replace the shop towels. I'll be back. So it's at this point that I would get ready to reassemble the spring retainer and swap out 1 or 2 springs depending on the setup that I want to go with based on this procedure for the Shift Technologies lockup conversion. But I have received my Transgo Shift Kit. I wasn't expecting this just yet. So my original plan was to just do the lockup conversion, reinstall the valve body, drive it, and then take everything back apart to do the shift kit. But I'm getting real tired of tearing into this transmission and doing this stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and just do the shift kit now, get it all done in one shot, get it back in the truck, and hopefully this will be the last time I have to tear into this transmission. All right, so now that I got everything kind of cleaned up and almost ready to go back together, the next step would be, or is, to replace this spring in the lockup module with the black spring from the kit. Actually gives you the option for early lockup, install the red spring, which would be that one, or for a later lockup, which is what I want, install the black spring. So that would just go right there. Then I can put the cover back on. All right, so one of the first things that I did was I pulled the procedure out for the Transgo Shift Kit and started comparing it to the Shift Technology Products procedure for the lockup. Just wanted to go through and see what kind of differences there were and anything that I might have to deal with. So based on the Transgo procedure, first step is if it has hole L, which would be a hole right here, which I don't have, so I can skip that step. The next step was the separator plate holes. So I compared those sizes compared to what I drilled out for the Shift Technologies products, and they're all pretty much the same except for this hole here. This says for the Transgo, it says take it to 0.110 to 0.14, but the Shift Technologies had me drill it out to 0.187. So that's a little bit larger than what the Transgo calls for. Hopefully that won't be a problem. Next was this spring that lives right about here. This valve body doesn't have it, so I don't need to do that step. The next was the two check balls. So there's a check ball that's right there, and another one that's right there. The Shift Technologies has you remove those check balls. The Transgo says if the channel casting has those check balls, reinstall them. And I remember when I did my B&M transmission kit, that it had you remove those. So there are some differences based on which kit you go with. All right, and then if plate has hole R, which it does, it says to reinstall that check ball. So again, this one calls for, the Transgo kit calls for both these check balls to be reinstalled, whereas the Shift Technologies has you remove them. That's for 6065 models only. It tells you what drill bits it comes with. So this part is all pretty much good to go. So the only difference is that one hole size. So hopefully that won't be an issue. All right, so now we get into some of the good stuff. So I can move this out of the way. Back into the actual valve body. Now, I had already had this ready to go back in, so the check balls were already, everything was reinstalled back in the valve body. I removed the check balls, and I'm going to need to remove the spring retainer again. So that's what I'm going to get ready to do now. All right, so I've got the rooster comb removed, which is basically your shift detent, being sure to not let the spring shoot the detent ball across the garage. So we're at this step here. So now I got to turn this over. And this is the manual valve. So we're going to be replacing this manual valve with the one that comes in the Transgo kit. So that up. So here's the new manual valve compared to the old one. And I believe, so if I remember right, if you look at the difference in the two manual valves, this new design is what allows the pump basically to cycle fluid while in park. So we're going to replace this valve with this one. I'm just going to make sure everything goes together well before I press on. So yeah, that goes in there fine. But what I need to do right now, I was looking at to see, because this came with this rod, and it looks like this rod was actually used to hold the detent ball in position while doing this. Whatever, I just took it out. I'll put it back in later. So I said this will get discarded. Before installing this though, calls to file a notch across this opening. The procedure is funny. It says it's not fussy. So I'm going to grab a file. I'm going to just file a notch across the bore, top to bottom. So I'm just going to take a triangular file to get it started, and then I'll probably use like a rat tail file to file that out. Doesn't really say anything about how deep it should go or how wide it should be or anything. All it says is it's not fussy. Give any kind of indication. Like I said, this is just aluminum, so it's filing real easy there. Just going to go right across the bore. All right, I took it down, oh, maybe a third of the way through that wall there. I think that'll probably be fine. I'm not even going to bother with the rat tail file. I'm just going to take this over, clean it off with some brake cleaner. I'm actually going to lay a new shop rag down to cover up all these filings, just so I don't contaminate anything. Let me go clean this off. All right, so now that I got everything cleaned up, I'm actually going to go ahead and it now has you reinstall the detent spring and ball. So that goes there, that would go there, and this actually, this is an installation tool apparently. So that you can get everything reinstalled. Of course, I'm catching my glove in there. Yeah, this is a pain in the ass. I think what I'm going to do is, so in my last valve body, I actually replaced the detent ball with this detent kind of plug and a different spring. So I pulled the spring out of there, and I'm actually going to use this one. I like this design a lot better. There's a lot less concern about it flying across the room. It just slides right in there, and there's your new detent. I have it in a box somewhere. If I remember, I'll link below to this setup. That way, it's a lot more positive fit there than just a ball and spring. So it says we get that installed, and then install the new manual valve body, or manual valve. So this says with the manual valve all the way inboard, which is the park position, the right edge of the tapered land must be flush with the right edge of partition A. So partition A, which we're right there. It says you're okay to be 30 thousandths, 0.030 flush either way is okay. We're right about there. So we're good. So I can reinstall the rooster comb. That in place. Can reinstall the washer and the E-clip. In the park position, double check that. See how flush we are. It is perfectly flush. In park, that tapered end is perfectly flush with that bulkhead. Everything engages, rides along there nice. All right. So the manual valve is in position. All right, so the next step is going to take drilling some holes in the valve body. In my case, I'm just going to be drilling one. So this procedure has you drill 2 holes down through, remove this valve, down through this cavity, through the bottom there, they come out the top through the valve body. But the last procedure I did with the Shift Technologies has you drill 2 holes that same size right here. So I'm just going to go with these 2. I'm not going to drill those other 2 down there. I think what it's meant to do is drain fluid out of this cavity. So either way, it should drain out of there. Next step is to install this drill plate that came with the Transgo kit. And I just used a couple of short screws from one of the other parts to hold it in place. And what it's going to do is give you this hole here where you're going to drill out through one of these passages. It also provides you with the drill bit and this spacer so you don't go too deep. As you put the spacer on there and set the distance from the end of the spacer to the end of the drill bit at 7/16 of an inch, which I already measured it out. So I'm going to use this to drill straight down through that, into that passage. I got my valve body in a vise just to help hold it flat, hold it steady while I drill this down. Not forcing it. There's the passage drilled out. So now I'm going to go and clean up all these shavings. All right, now that I got the valve body all cleaned out, got rid of all those shavings, I just cleaned it out with some brake cleaner and then sprayed it with some compressed air to make sure there are no shavings in there. Now it has you, so these next steps are not done. So I went ahead and just crossed them out on the procedure. I'm not doing any drilling. This is an 81 valve body, so it says don't drill and nothing goes here for this area here. We're not going to drill through the side. So now we move on to the throttle valve, which lives right here on the valve body, and this actually rides on that. So we're going to remove the throttle valve and the spring, and we're going to replace that. It says to replace it with the yellow or pink throttle valve spring. Is the same diameter. So the yellow one in the kit is the same diameter. The pink one's a little bit bigger. I think I put it back in the box. So the pink one doesn't fit, so we're going with the yellow one. That just slides right back in there. The sleeve goes in, and now that's replaced. Moving on. Check ball usage. All right. So I'm going to get this the same orientation as the drawing. It just makes it easy to follow along if everything is orientated the same way. There we go. I went ahead and I stuck all my check balls in the filter extender here for my deep oil pan, my deep trans pan. So we're going to go with check ball C, which is, actually this is the 11/32 ball. Obviously that goes there. And then we're going to go with one of the check balls goes there. Over there, 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 and there. This last one, which was supposed to go here for 77 and up models, we're not putting that one back in. So, put that one aside. Now for the converter valve. Damn magnets. Oh, so the spring that goes on the converter valve is here, because this will ride right here. So we have 1, 2, 3. So it says reuse the original converter valve with the original spring. Install the new shim and spring seat on the PR valve before installing a new inner and outer PR valve spring. So there's the PR valve, pressure relief valve. So we're going to put this shim and the seat. It's got a flat edge that's going to sit down on there. All right, the new inner spring and outer, which is different than, this is the stock spring. So we're going to replace this stock spring here with this yellow spring. So this can go, that will go away. We'll have an inner and outer now. Those will go on there. And then we got to go ahead and reinstall without dropping check balls. Where was that one? Right there. Okay. And then this, and this. There. I'm going to go ahead and dump these check balls out, and then I'll put them back in. I was just verifying. It says that when you install that shim, to make sure that there's some clearance between that flat edge and the casting, and there's a little bit of clearance there. So now we're going to adjust the adjusting screw, and that we adjust, turn it clockwise until it sits flush against the inside edge of the retainer. It's just flush. There we go. All right, so this is the optional shift command, which I'm not going to do. This allows you to drop into low gear at any time that you want, but it means really grinding down one of the valves in here, and I'm not really wanting to do that. I don't want to take it that far, so we're going to skip this step. And then these final steps are all done in the transmission, which was already done with the previous shift kit that I did. So now we're ready to start basically reassembling this. I'm going to go back to this procedure because in here there's actually a feeler gauge, or not really a feeler gauge, but it has you make some adjustments to the valve body, and this gauge is used to get some of those measurements correct. But what I'm going to go ahead and do right now is get the two halves reassembled. Start getting everything put back together and not have to worry about losing check balls. Once I got everything reassembled, the two halves of the valve body put back together, I used this gauge that came with the Shift Technologies kit. And what this is for is to adjust the distance between the manual valve and this adjustment screw. So that should slide right in there. And it does. The other adjustment I wanted to make was the throttle pressure adjustment. So this part of the gauge should slip right in there. And it does. The third adjustment it calls for is to adjust, to set the distance for the line pressure adjusting screw, but per the shift kit, that's supposed to be flush. So I'm not going to do that step. So with all that done, the Transgo shift kit is done, and the Shift Technologies lockup adjustment is done. Now all I got to do is remount the lockup module with the tube, and then I also want to install this. Now in the last video I found out this was a 3-2 shift module or something like that. It is actually, according to the ATSG manual here, see if I can find it again. Yep. So this is the 3-2 downshift and limit valve assembly. So it says used on some V8 models. So it actually goes right here. So I'm going to go ahead and install this, and then I'm going to remount my lockup module. And with that, the the Transgo Shift Kit and the Shift Technologies products lockup adjustment is done. Valve body's all put back together. This thing's ready to go back in the truck. Gotta love the cold start. So obviously once I got everything back together, I had to take it for a test drive, and hopefully the sounds of the shifts show up well on this recording. When I was in the truck, I was wearing a lav mic. You can hear the shifts, and they sound a lot better. They sound a lot more crisp. Hopefully that shows up well on the video itself. So I'm not really sure just how well it's going to show up in the video, but the shifts are firmer now, a lot better. They're not overly firm like they were with my previous valve body. I don't know what the deal was with that one, but there were no anomalies either in the upshift or the downshift. They were just some good solid shifts. So overall, I'm really happy with this kit. So it's not anything that's really too difficult as long as you take your time, understand and follow the directions, and just keep track of everything and try to keep a nice clean work area. You won't hopefully have any issues. It's actually a really simple project and very beneficial. Like I said, by improving the shifts, by making the shifts more firm, it's less slippage in the transmission and parts will last longer. And it just kind of feels more like a hot rod. So thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe, hit the bell, leave some comments down below. Let me know, what you guys think of this project, and I'll catch you on the next one.